right, we just had a great episode of The Den where I interviewed Jeff Devlin, chief of the rural metro for Knox County. He is running for Board of Mayor and Aldermen in the North Ward for Farragut. And we talked about hot topics such as traffic, apartments, the growth in Farragut, and the vision plan. You really want to watch this episode if Farragut politics is on your mind. All right, welcome to another episode of The Den. I'm Eric Whitner, broker owner of the Knox Real Estate Group, and today my special guest is Jeff Devlin, who is running for Farragut Board of Aldermen, Ward 1, or the North Ward. Jeff's lived in Farragut since 2012 and West Knoxville since 1987. He's done many tours with the fire department in Farragut and spent 12 years as the battalion chief in West Knoxville. He is currently the interim fire chief for rural metro, so all of Knox County. For over 8 years, Jeff has been a volunteer in committees in the town of Farragut, such as the Personnel Committee, Parks and Athletic Council. He's currently on the Board of Zoning Appeals and Municipal Planning Commission. Jeff's been married for almost 25 years to a forensic anthropologist at UT. Those sound like exciting dinner conversations. Joanne and Jeff are dad to a 20-year-old UT student who's also a Webb graduate, Liam.
Yep.
Liam plays lacrosse at UT. Jeff is also the head coach of Webb's middle school boys lacrosse team. Just to touch on that real quick, pretty sure Terry, Joe, and I were downtown at an awards thing. I want to say this was more of a high school thing where all the students and we got pictures, specifically of you and your son, for Farragut Rotary, to tie all that in a loop. So pretty interesting. So it was Terry Joe was like, hey, so like remind him like we were there. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Small world. All right. So the reason why you're here today is because you're running for an alderman position. Correct. For the town of Farragut. Let's talk about it for a minute. Why are you running?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity to get to express kind of my views and what I'm all about. So why am I running? Great question. So it's a little bit of a long answer. So more than 8 years ago, there was an alderman position to be appointed in the North Ward, and that's the position the vice mayor is currently in. And I went up for that and had the experience of, I thought it would be interesting, get to go talk to the mayor and alderman, and we had an exchange. Ultimately, they picked the right person, who was the vice mayor. She had been on committees and volunteered for a long time. And so I talked to Mayor McGill after that was over. I said, hey, what can I do? How can I get involved? And that's when I started a little over 8 years ago on the Personnel Committee. Personnel Committee was great. That's a defunct committee now. The town has a vibrant HR staff, does a great job. But being on that committee taught me the value of the employees and how important they are to the town. And so, because the town has great employees and they do a fantastic job. Ultimately, I did not have on the radar. I got appointed to Municipal Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. If it's a year, it's a lot. It's not been that long. And I was on Parks and Athletic Council for over 5 years. And I didn't have it on the radar to run for alderman, but I got asked to do it by people that I respect and I think have done a good job in the town, and whose vision for the future I tend to agree with. So I ultimately said yes, and so now I'm here and giving it my all.
So, and I think that's awesome. I mean, obviously, you've been in the fire department. Even though that's in one sense it's a job, but in the other sense it is giving back to the community. I mean, now you're the chief of people who basically you send out into burning buildings. That sense of, I want to call it selflessness. Like I personally, I have a lot of respect for anybody who wants to run for these positions because I know they're unpaid positions. It is a volunteer service.
Right.
So you're taking time out of your day to do something for our area, and I think that's pretty awesome. You mentioned vision, and I recently interviewed the mayor, Ron Williams, and he talked a lot about vision. What a lot of people don't understand what that vision is because that's kind of an abstract thing in one regard, but
Sure.
it really, I mean, there is actually a vision.
Yeah, there is. And at Planning Commission as recently as last week, there was I felt like, a really good dialogue. There were 5 or 6 speakers, certainly Planning Commission. There was a big discussion about whether the vision plan should be an ordinance or not. I leaned into it being an ordinance, although there are issues with it possibly being an ordinance that needs to be examined. And the reason for this is that, I remember when there was a Phillips 66 abandoned here. I remember when the Kroger looked like a bombed out building, the Ingalls, the Silver Spoon.
Mm-hmm.
It was dilapidated and it was an embarrassment. And my attitude is vision is what helped fix those things. The bottom line is not everybody's going to totally agree.
Right.
And the community has to have a dialogue about the vision, right? So a vision plan is not set in stone, even if it is an ordinance, right? It just tells people this is what we're going to try to go do, right? People deserve in the community to have an understanding of what the plan is. All across Knox County, we've seen what a lack of a plan has done.
100%.
Farragut, for the most part, has had a plan. But now we have these, as we're growing out, we have these big parcels that need to be decided upon. Now, the fact is, I didn't vote on Biddle. I wasn't even part of that. I have my own issues with Biddle, the Biddle property, and maybe things we could have done differently. But ultimately, the theme of it was a walkable town center, and that's what is there now. And I'm excited about it. Certainly, Mayor Ford's property, the vision plan is trying to make that multi-purpose, some, townhomes, some single-family residences, some commercial, and to, again, make it walkable, right? So that's the vision. I certainly agree with it. There are people that are not going to, and that's totally okay.
Yeah, we do have, I mean, we have a very interesting setup here in the fact that the town of Farragut is it is in one regard a small town,
Right.
but in another regard it's not. I mean,
Sure.
we are literally adjacent to Knoxville and Turkey Creek. I mean, we pretty much touch lines.
Sure.
So I like to tell people, I'm like, we have a Costco. Costco's don't move to small towns.
Yeah, that's an interesting discussion, right? So when the founders set up Farragut, right, they did it to protect things like one sheet of asphalt roads, right? To get developers to be more involved in making sure that roads were built properly, to protect against stormwater. Village Green being flooded out is a prime example of where a lot of the key players got involved. Protecting the town is super important, right, for the future. But ultimately, it wasn't set up to only be just a tiny little town, right? They had a vision for the future. It's the reason why zoning is commercial all across Kingston Pike. That was already baked in, right? And the Planning Commission here, for the most part, didn't change some of those things. So, but they did set up protections, signs, and trees, and things like that, which I completely support. Now, the other part of it is there are people that still want this to be a sleepy bedroom community. The reality is that by certain metrics like population density, it's been officially an urban area for a long time.
Yeah.
So, look, this is hard, right? People have a hard time when they remember the past and they remember things that they enjoyed about the past. And the future can be scary and challenging, right, for people. And again, nobody likes to sit in traffic for 3 light sequences when school's in session at Kingston Pike. But ultimately, what I'm about is if there are things we need to do about traffic, we'll do that for the future. But we're not going to be able to stop people from moving to Farragut. This is a fantastic place to live, and people are going to want to live here. And it's about managing the growth and doing it in a way that protects what this town is and the themes of it, but ultimately, we're not going to just shut down growth. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and I mean, growth is obviously growth is definitely on the ticket on the docket. Let's say growth is something that one of those hot topics.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of growth in a short period of time, but that's also, or I should say, a lot of development,
Right.
right? But that development, number one, maybe was overdue. And number two, we had a huge population increase in a short period of time, and development is now just basically catching up.
Agreed.
So that's just something that you can't. As a real estate agent, one thing that and just as a homeowner, as somebody who pays their mortgage and has their little plot of land, you can't just dictate what somebody can do with their own property.
Of course.
I mean, I think of Mayor right by Town Hall, Eddie Ford.
Yep.
His property.
Yeah.
How long has he owned that?
Long time.
Long time, and he has maintained it. He has paid his taxes on it, and he is waiting for the right person to come and hand him a very large check. And to be able to just say, hey, we're not gonna let you develop on it. That's not gonna happen.
No, I mean, property rights in Tennessee are sacrosanct, right? They're king. And so, that's the rub too. And this is interesting because it adds to a couple of other conversations that I think are super important. So, I literally moved here for the greenways and the parks. I think they are the crown jewel of the town. Literally, that's why I was here, because I was on them all the time, and we saw a house we loved, and I was like, man, we can do this all the time. Like, I mean, this is great. And certainly being on Parks and Athletic Council for over 5 years just kind of showed me the value of our parks. And I'm glad I got to play some small part in the development of them. But property rights are king, and people have a right to their own property and the impact it has on them. So Turkey Creek's a great example of this, right? So, my attitude about putting the $500,000 in the budget is literally for the road and the road safety. Those people had legitimate concerns about the Greenway going in, the extension. And I was the first guy on Planning Commission. I'm sure some other people felt the same way, and I was the first one to talk, so I guess that makes me first. But I've said point blank, these people have real concerns. This got to be looked at some more. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't actually know whether there are real legal issues. But if we told Sheffield that we wouldn't do this, we should honor that commitment. And so my attitude is there a middle ground? Is there a compromise? That's what good governance is, right? It's compromise. And ultimately, these people have a right to say we don't want this. And I felt like it is a big impact to their property. And so I'm hesitant about it, to be honest with you. I want to see the data and the real details on the road safety component, right? Because government does have a responsibility to keep people safe. So we'll see where that goes. But ultimately, again, people have a right. And that leads me to the second one, which is Sonia Drive, right? Or Sonia Road. And again, this is where like two things come together. Two things can be true at the same time. I drove down Sonia the other day, was taking a sign to somebody who wanted one, campaign sign. And man, there's a lot of houses down Sonia where people have improved their property.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great. And yeah, I've driven fire trucks up and down Sonia for 30 years, and it's narrow and it's tough. But if people go 25 miles an hour, you can probably do it, right? The issue is that with Sonia, it's a parental responsibility zone, which means the town has a responsibility to make sure kids that are trying to get to school back and forth on foot are safe. And so how can we make sure it has a sidewalk the entire length of Sonia? How can we make sure that cars are in the roadway and it's not too narrow? But also, if some of the people on Sonia don't want that road widened / a sidewalk put in, they need to be heard, right? Because again, I get it. Like I've worked and improved my property here, and this is going to have an impact. But there has to be a dialogue, right? And I think there are people in the town, for whatever reason, that feel like some of that dialogue hasn't happened. I know that I know some people are exasperated about feeling like they've done, we've had these meetings and we've tried to communicate. So my attitude towards that and what I'm all about is we need to make sure that we're listening to people and we're having constructive dialogues. I thought last Thursday night, specifically about the vision plan, was good. It was good for the town. Got to hear all sides, right?
So okay, so just like because I don't know exactly on the Sonia Drive,
Sure.
Sonia Road. Are there people who don't want a sidewalk?
I honestly don't know. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I'm sure there are, right? I mean, that's a normal thing, right? Like I'm at my house. I've spent a lot of money to improve it, and I'm on Sonya all the time. I feel like it's completely safe. I'm sure there are people that do want it, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are differences of opinion.
So just being able to listen to both sides. At the end of the day, one thing I could always imagine being hard in that position is leadership's not always doing what makes everybody happy.
Of course.
It's about saying, okay, so I've gotten the facts.
Right.
I've seen, I've heard. At the end of the day, this is the route that I feel is the best
Sure.
for everybody. And undoubtedly, that does make some people unhappy.
Yeah.
But again, leadership's not a popularity contest.
Right.
As you know, I assume
Sure.
being
Right. So no, it's a great lead-in. So
Yeah.
like my whole life, really, at the fire department has not been just running emergencies. It's leading men and women, right, into something that at times is extremely difficult. So yeah, I mean, I have that experience, right? So I think the winning ticket on that is making sure that the people that are going to be on the opposite side of that decision, right, where you're not trying to win a popularity contest, you're making a tough choice, that you have a relationship with those people, right, as much as possible.
Yeah.
If there's 100 people that are opposed to, this issue, but generally speaking, those people are going to have certain advocates, and you need to have a relationship with them. And there does need to be, as much as possible, because again, there are always going to be some people that you're just not going to connect with. They're, for whatever reason, they're going to decide they don't trust you. But you need to make the effort to have a relationship with them and listen to them. And that's ultimately, what I'm about.
So some other topics that I know people are talking about. We talked about the vision plan a little bit. We talked about growth. We've hit on traffic, even though right now is as we're sitting here talking, there are people running lines and setting up new traffic. I mean, things are happening to make a difference.
Yeah. So traffic is interesting. And I'm not laughing. It'll be like cynical about it. I've been here a long time, and driving emergency vehicles, you can get extremely frustrated with the average.
I could imagine.
Right. And I have a couple of takeaways about traffic. So traffic is annoying, and people don't like to be in it. But I also know from a lot of personal experience that what actually kills and injures people in motor vehicle accidents is speed, right? Kinetic energy. So having slower traffic is not a bad thing. Having said that, we got, this is roughly $7 million, if I'm not mistaken, of mostly grant money. Kudos to the town leadership for getting that money. They do a fabulous job with grants. Again, the employees are just spectacular in the town. And we need to give this thing a chance to work. Look, if we need a second turn lane on Campbell Station Road, the data and the evidence will be there, and we'll make that decision going forward. But I'm also not the kind of person that believes that every stroke is a perfect stroke, right? There will be a consequence to doing that has to also be examined. So I think my attitude is that we need to give the traffic flow system that a lot of money's been spent on a chance to work.
Right.
That's conservative stewardship of tax dollars, right? Of which there's a limited supply. So, look, I mean, I think it'll work. I think if it doesn't work, we'll have to make some choices afterwards.
The interesting thing about traffic in Farragut to me is so you have controllables and uncontrollables.
Yep.
The uncontrollable is our proximity to the interstate.
Yeah.
And we all know the interstate, I think, is a bigger issue than Kingston Pike because
I agree.
we have so many people passing through
Sure.
that end up on our roads whenever that backs up.
It's unfortunate the orange route didn't happen. It should have. Now, hopefully there'll be another look at that where we can go up to Claiborne County or somewhere like that and make a bypass because it's important. Eventually it has to happen. We can widen 40 to 8 lanes and knock my house over, but because I literally am in Weatherly Hills, I butt up against it. But the bottom line is that eventually it's gonna need a bypass, and I really appreciate local leadership. Certainly Senator Briggs, Representative Zachary, the mayors, and all the people on BOMA for helping get that agenda back in line because the exits need to be fixed at Watt and Campbell Station, and we do need, basically the taxed lane going up and down 40.
Well, the other portion of the traffic I find, I mean, today, so there's no school in session right now.
Yeah.
And traffic is not near what it is normally when school is.
Sure.
So to me, that's kind of like a self-inflicted thing. Our when I say self-inflicted, I mean homeowners.
Yeah, right.
We
Sure.
jump in the vehicle, drive our kid, we add to the traffic.
Yeah. It's America.
It's America.
We drive cars.
You can do that. So I mean, whose fault is it? Are we supposed to plan for people to drive their kids to school beyond? I don't know.
I mean, I always am interested in that. What are I don't know. Honestly, I'll be very honest. I don't know what the numbers are of people. How many kids who could use the bus are now in a car, because their parents are driving them. But I get that. I mean, my kid went to Episcopal school in Webb. I spent we drove him every day, right?
And I'm not throwing knives here because I drove my kid.
Sure,
I drove my kid to school. I just didn't complain about the traffic.
I gotcha.
Which is interesting.
I'm again, having been somebody who has spent, I'm in the chief mobile now, but as somebody who is running emergency traffic to emergencies, you can get very frustrated with traffic. There's no doubt about it. And just me as a private citizen sitting in traffic, if I'm there for 3 light sequences, and I get
the frustration.
Yes, absolutely. And so government has to be responsive to that, right? You can't just blow that off about traffic. But there's also these uncontrollables, right? It's engaging with Loudoun County Commission, right, about what they're doing and making sure there's relationships there, because that has a huge impact too.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the development of Choteau, right, has done a lot to traffic in the town. Things that have, I know people that live in Choteau that drive by my house in Grigsby Chapel going to the interstate. So, these things are not easy things to solve. I certainly tend to agree that 40 is the kind of a big key to unlock things.
Which means that being the case, that's not a solution that's going to be fixed tomorrow.
Right.
That's going to be a project, and even from the day it started,
it's going to take a long time.
And so it just. But I do like what I hear you saying as far as, hey, we're installing these lights. Yeah. That's a system that we spent a lot of money and time planning. Let's see
taxpayers did.
Let's see what impact that makes, and go from there. Sure. Makes a lot of sense because you can't if you throw 3 or 4 solutions at it, you don't know what solution's working and which one isn't.
The other thing too that's come up a few times is islands, right? So islands are set up to kind of calm traffic. If I've had $1 for everybody, Grigsby Chapel, they look great, right? I think it has calmed traffic somewhat. But again, there are no perfect strokes, right? Traffic can also jam up, and there can be stacking because of those islands. If I had $1 for everybody who's pulled into my subdivision because they were driving a little erratically, and now they have a flat tire because they drove into one of the islands, I'd have a little bit of money.
Yeah.
So again, these things are not always perfect strokes. In the vision plan, there were islands on Kingston Pike, islands on Jamestown. There already is an island on Jamestown. Legacy, been here a long time. And islands on Concord. Certainly, first of all, state highways, Kingston Pike State Highway, so you're not going to be able to decide to put islands on it. And islands on Concord, again, aesthetically, they're probably really nice. But realistically, you're probably not going to be able to put islands on Concord, right? But making that decision today is not good for the town, right? It's a vision plan that can be altered. So what actually develops on Concord? What does Concord look like when we get to the point where we're going to make some decision about islands? That's to me when you listen to all of the parties and you get all the information and then make that decision. But most likely you're not putting islands on Concord, in my opinion. It's just going to be too difficult to do that. Because it is accurate when you're trying to take large emergency vehicles, islands at times can be an issue.
So we've talked. I have four topics here.
All right, good. Let's go.
We've talked vision, growth, and traffic.
Yeah.
That's the other one that keeps popping up is apartments.
Yeah.
Obviously we've had some new additions to the area. Which first of all, I'm just gonna ask a question. Can we even have more apartments come in Farragut?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that, again, the responsibility of government is to also make sure they listen to the constituents. I'm personally against more apartments, but also that I don't believe the constituents are for more apartments. Now, having said that, I'm not opposed to a lot of the apartments we have. Again, I might have made a few different choices on Biddle, but I wasn't involved in the process. And it's really no different on Lot Road. It's a process I was not involved in. I'm not in love with the apartments at Watt Road, aesthetically or otherwise. Having said that, again, it's not always easy. These are complex things, and two things can be true at the same time. There's also, the town is staring into an issue of we won't have younger people living here. And how many assisted living homes do we have? Where are the nursing homes? There's going to be a serious issue for our seniors. We need to make sure that, and again, it's always going to be a higher end town, right? You're not going to be able to fix that. And I'm not for subsidized housing necessarily. But having said that, the ability for somebody to have an apartment in the town and live here and work here is not a bad thing, right? And a lot of the apartments are cost prohibitive. They're very high end. They're very nice. So I'm not, and we've had apartments here for a long time. Lanesboro, for example, Fret's been here a long time.
I feel like there are people who live in Farragut who don't even realize that there were apartments or are apartments that have been here for a long time. Because if you go up and down Grigsby Chapel, you would not know that there's an apartment
tucked away.
Yeah.
Well, and I think honestly that's probably some people's issue, right? Is that I used to drive down Kingston Pike. I used to really enjoy, the Biddle property was farmland and they had a barn and it was really nice. And now there's like big apartments, and people can viscerally react to that and decide they don't like that. That's totally okay. I believe that the town was formed with no property tax, and we need to make sure, right, that we're never faced with having to raise property taxes. This is where apartments are important. It's because the more people that do live in the town as we build out, the more tax dollars the town is receiving from the state. By having commercial businesses and places to shop and go hang out and having a town center, that's people spending their tax dollars, and we receive the sales tax off of that. If we just shut everything down and don't grow and just put a few more houses in, you're going to be faced at some point with not having the funds that you need to keep the town the way it is. And we've been faced with this before, and it's a lot of people don't realize, is when the state legislature and the governor passed it, when the hall tax went away, which was when you passed away, pretty sure it was over $1 million. If you had over $1 million, a certain amount of that was taxed. Well, that went away, which I think is great. But the problem is at that point, if I'm not mistaken, that was $750,000 the town was going to be short, right? So, point being is that being fiscally responsible also means making sure that the town's going to have enough of funds and there's enough of growth and sales tax and people here and it's vibrant.
I mean, I agree with all that. I look at from a, again, looking at the history of Farragut from a consumer standpoint.
Sure.
We talk about like some rundown buildings and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I know a lot of people talk about vacancy. Vacancy is a hot topic where they're like, well, why are we building when there's,
Sure.
I
said the same thing.
The Ingalls over here is sitting vacant.
Absolutely.
However, I will tell you that nobody answers the phone when you call them to try to rent the space over there because
Ingalls is interesting.
yeah. So, but you can only control what you want. And if somebody wants to develop something,
That's right.
now I think of so the small businesses alongside Kroger that have made it through, before any of that construction started, before COVID, dealt with COVID,
Sure.
now are going to have people who literally will be able to walk over,
Agreed.
shop there, even if it adds just a few more consumers to their good for in a way, good for them. They've stuck it out. This is an opportunity. I also see comments where people say, "Well, businesses just come and go anyways," and it's like, well, they should.
If you're a small business owner, you don't feel that way.
No, yeah, like now, granted, sometimes somebody opens something and it just doesn't stick. I get it, but ideally, like most businesses make a very educated decision when they open up in a spot.
Yeah.
Hey,
Right.
I went through a lot of work to I don't own this building, but I lease it, but it wasn't easy to get in here.
Sure.
But the opportunity to be in Farragut on Kingston Pike was a big deal to us. So, having that exposure is a good thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think, again, it's about balance, right? That the town of Farragut, in my opinion, has always been pro-business, but it also has always been a residential community that was pro its citizens too, right? And making sure that their needs were met also. So I do think you can have both, and ultimately that's my mindset is the best thing about the apartments is going to be the walkability to business for sure.
well, and also just even, I know it sounds weird to have a Publix at the end of Turkey Creek and then have a Publix over near, Watt Road,
Right.
but at the end of the day, that also stops somebody from driving all the way to the other, it shortens the commute.
There will be people that go to Publix from Loudoun County or certain people in
that may have driven all the way into
Absolutely.
Turkey Creek to go to Publix.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately, personally, I might have preferred something different, but we go to Publix. I like Publix, but would have been nice to have something different. But ultimately, I do think that it will help with some of that. More options is not a bad thing.
So let's dig into obviously the campaign side of things.
Sure.
Okay, so you do have you have opponents or an opponent.
I do have an opponent. I think there's also a I did get a letter. There's a write-in candidate too. I don't know who. I don't remember who it is, but there's a write-in candidate also.
Okay.
Along with
So there's been talk on social media already, like things like Nextdoor and Facebook. So just to get kind of into that, I'm just doing my research.
Sure.
Number one, there's been talk about donating to Democratic candidates. Also, I mean, voting that way.
Yeah.
So what's your response to that?
Well, I think the first thing is I don't apologize for that, right? So I'm an independent person. I approach things independently. There are facts, though, right? So there is no doubt that I have donated to Democratic candidates, especially at the federal level. But I've also donated to Republican candidates, and that's the truth, especially locally, and where there's a real impact in what we're talking about today, right?
Right.
So. Look, I get it. We live in a very polarized society. That's okay. If people want to judge me, that's open information. You can go to the FEC and see that. I don't shy away from it. But again, the truth is this is a nonpartisan election for a volunteer position, and I'm willing to serve. But it's also okay if people vote for somebody else. I'm not running against anybody. I hate even calling it an opponent. My attitude is if Alex wins, I'm going to support him any way I can. People have a right to just go choose.
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh, let me say this too, because I think it's relevant. I have voted for Democrats. I've voted for Republicans. I think Mayor Jacobs has done a great job. I think Senator Briggs has done a great job. People like that. So like I'm not an ideologue, right? I move through the ether, picking my spots on what I believe is right. In truth, I'm a centrist, right? I believe that compromise is important. Good governance matters. People are experienced and know what they're doing.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that it's interesting because I will say that there's this push. I mean, obviously we see it on the national level. This two-sided teams. It's become very
Yeah.
much like football.
Yeah.
Like what team are you for? And we're starting to see that more in our local politics, where I mean, just like this, hey, like someone's saying, hey, it scares me that he's done this. But ideally, what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is in this situation, if you win, you've already said you're going to talk to the parties,
Of course.
do things by the vision.
Yeah.
I mean, you already have kind of an outline.
Yeah, I don't have an agenda to, change Farragut in certain ways, right? I mean, or anyway, really. I mean, you got to listen to what the people want and be their representative on BOMA. And again, my attitude is my belief system. I believe is in line with the majority of the people in Farragut. I am not for putting in a property tax. I'm not for increasing taxes at all. I'm absolutely approving of what they've done for many years, is have a balanced budget and no debt. Like, those are things I believe in. And last time I checked, those are fiscally conservative positions.
Yeah, very much so. All right, so I'm going to just touch on a couple comments. This one here was by Randall Roberts, who is not running against you.
I met Randall. I went out after. I mean, interrupt you. I went out after Planning Commission and shook his hand, tried to meet him. I don't know Randall, but
So the comment is basically like
Sure.
You sit on the FMPC and the
Right.
Board of Zoning Appeals, heavily entrenched with those on BOMA. Ask yourself who appointed them to those committee. Do you really think he'll vote any different than what Pavlin did on these ridiculous projects? And keep pushing, like forcing eminent domain against property owners to build a 16, which we touched on.
Yeah, we actually talked about that.
That virtually no one will ever use at a cost of $3 million. So he's basically saying that you're going to just do whatever the mayor wants you to do.
Well, I think my friends and my family would find that I'm going to be anybody's puppet, or it's kind of laughable. Having said that, look, I'm sure that I have no doubt that Randall cares about the town and is passionate about his beliefs. And I would like nothing more than to listen to him and hear him out and really get at what his issues are. My attitude is very clear. I have a ton of respect and admiration for what Mayor Williams has done and what Vice Mayor Pavlin has done for this town. Again, we've talked a lot about it, and it's okay if people disagree with that. You have other choices, I think, probably. Again, I'm not even 100% sure what Alex is even all about, but I think that I'll let him speak for himself. Again, I'm not running against Alex. I think if people like what I have to say, I'd love their vote. I'd love to serve. But if there's other people saying something different and you want to vote for them, I'm going to be here in the town. I love Farragut, and I'm going to support whoever's on BOMA to the best of my ability.
So along that line, because I pulled a comment from Alex Kane, which is very similar to Randall Roberts. But this one pulls again. So my opponent, who was handpicked by the powers to be here in the town of Farragut, has voted in the last 12 Democratic primaries according to his public voting record. He currently sits on the Planning Commission and the Appeals Committee here in town. He basically will be a rubber stamp for the initiatives put forth by the mayor and the soon-to-be former vice mayor. It's a very similar comment.
Yeah, sure. So here's what I would say. I don't know Alex any more than I know Randall, and I'm sure, I have no doubt, he's running for the right reasons. He has a passion for service and has issues with how the direction the town's going in. But I won't shy away from certain things. I have voted in Democratic primaries. The last 12 is a stretch. I voted in the 2016 Republican primary, for example. So, I don't know if the numbers line up. I don't think so. I have voted in many Republican primaries, so I don't know where that's coming from. But if it is the facts, then so be it. Again, I don't shy away from it. My attitude is I decided to run.
Yeah.
With my family. We decided that. Nobody, if somebody wants to use the term handpicked, people did approach me and ask me to run, but the mayor and the vice mayor were not the only people that asked me to run.
I find it interesting, and this is something I look forward to hopefully having the conversation with the other ones running.
Sure.
I feel like there's this anti-BOMA stance that they're trying to get on BOMA to be anti-BOMA. In other words, a rubber stamp would be saying yes to everything. I almost feel as if their answer is a no to everything. And that's no better.
Sure. Again, I don't know that I know exactly what their true belief systems are. I'm not particularly interested in getting into keyboard fights on social media. I think for me, what this is ultimately about is I understand and am sympathetic and have empathy for people that are disturbed by the growth in the town. That for some people, it feels very different than their experiences here. Having said that, I think you just have to listen to people. And I believe that this BOMA has tried to do that. Can it be improved upon? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not on BOMA. But I don't know that banging stuff out on social media either is particularly helping, right?
Well, something I've struggled with, because I've been a big supporter of the Farragut West Knox Chamber. My wife literally just had her last day on the board of directors yesterday for the Farragut West Knox Chamber. I'm on the Education Foundation for the Farragut High School. We've been involved in a lot of aspects of Farragut in more of the community sense,
sure.
Right? I know that I have seen the mayor and the vice mayor directly involved in a lot of those things.
Sure.
And what I haven't seen is a lot of these other people who like to point fingers at them and accuse them of stuff, not be at those. Like, right. It's not easy after you've spent your day doing whatever you do and then go show up at a meeting at the high school, at 6:30 right. to sure. Then just to make sure that, hey, are there any questions about how funds should get used? Yeah. Because, it's just, those are things that I really wish that people were involved before. I mean, I will say, like, you have experience in the town of Farragut from a committee volunteer standpoint.
Yeah.
I think once you start getting involved and you start actually conversing with these people on that level, that you see a different side of stuff. Like, it's easy to pick something apart because you heard a soundbite, but I personally I struggle with some of those. There's certain individuals in the town that make a lot of noise, point a lot of fingers, put signs in their yards, um, stuff like that. That when you know somebody, it's almost hard not to find that somewhat offensive. You
Sure.
know, I'm not saying that I agree with everything everybody does,
Right.
but I also know that they are well-meaning individuals who have spent a lot of time and energy
100%.
trying to do stuff for our town.
Right.
So let's moving on.
Yeah, sure.
Let's just talk about you for a second and why people should vote for you in the North Ward.
Yeah, I think most importantly, we want people to vote. The turnouts are really poor, and
I agree.
and some of that has to do with we're gonna early vote July 12th through the 27th, and election day is on the 1st, and people are busy, and it's a weird time. We've got a really big election coming up in November, so I think people get a little disconnected too, and people have to live their lives, right? And that's again some of the traffic things is people are interested in making sure that they get their kids to school, and they got to get to the grocery store, and they got to go to work, and a lot of things, and they have kids sports and all these other things going on. They've taken vacations, but ultimately we want people to vote. And if there's choices that can be made, if you believe in, for example, we're going to watch this podcast later, right? If you're going to watch this and you agree that you think I can be of service to the town, then yeah, I humbly, absolutely ask for your vote. But ultimately, I think 33 years in emergency services has taught me that while the challenges facing the town are real and meaningful, if people don't vote for me, I'll be okay.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. It is interesting, and I will just put my 2 cents in on the voting and why I think it's important. I think more people complain about traffic than vote. And with that being said, like if you want to complain about Biddle Farms or traffic
Sure.
or anything in the town of Farragut that you feel BOMA had anything to do with, like vote.
Absolutely.
I mean that's
Yeah.
bottom line.
Please go vote.
Yeah, go vote. It's your civic duty. Like go do it. Um, is there anything else before we wrap up? Is there anything else
Sure.
you'd like to add?
No, I mean I think I've kind of covered all of it. I believe the town's best days are ahead of it, and I think people like the founders and I will talk about this because it's really interesting. So when Farragut was founded, Mayor McGill ultimately wasn't the choice for mayor initially. One of the people, Bob Leonard, old-time landowner who was part of the group that was against forming of the town, became the mayor. And for me, that is so important because it shows what we can do together, right, as a community, instead of being on these polar sides where we just fight all the time. And that's what I'm all about, right? Ultimately, there are people even who live in Farragut who are against forming the town. There's always been a certain amount of I don't agree with the vision, with the path to the future. So while I certainly believe, for example, the biggest thing on the talking we're about today is the walkable town center, you have to engage and be part of the discussion with the people that are opposed to that, right? So I certainly personally am about that and want to hear people out. I believe that the people on BOMA have tried to do that. So we have to move forward together, ultimately, which is why, ultimately, if I'm not elected, I'm going to support Alex, right?
Yeah. So I wonder how many people who have moved here in the last couple of years could imagine not having the town of Farragut, right? Like, because,
Right.
I mean, if you moved here for a handful of reasons. One, you moved here for Parks and Rec.
Yep.
You moved here for proximity to
Sure.
good shopping and whatnot, restaurants. You moved here for good schools.
A feeling of community.
Feeling
right?
a community.
So if your kids are all together at Farragut High School, if you're going to service at Concord Christian or St. John Newman or wherever you're going, or we're going to have a new Mormon temple, which is super great and interesting. that is a sense of community, right? And I feel Farragut has that. There are other places in Knox County that have it, but there's other places in Knox that don't. And one of the great things about the town is it gives you a closer touch to your local government, and I think that's great.
That's awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, Jeff, or should I call you Chief?
No, a lot of people call me Chief, but you can call me Jeff.
Jeff? Okay.
My kid's on the middle school lacrosse team call me Chief for sure.
That's awesome. All right. Well, all right. Man, I appreciate you coming on here.
Thanks for having me.
Putting it all out there.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you running. Like I said, I think that's a big deal. Appreciate what you do with the fire department. Keeping us safe. At one point, different show. I'd love to have you back so we could talk about rural metro.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll wear the uniform for that one. So.
I feel like that is one of those things that a lot of people don't understand, especially moving here.
It's odd for sure.
But I do appreciate what you do in that capacity, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks.
And who knows? Maybe once after the election's over, we can come back and talk completely different.
Yeah, right.
Different deal.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey guys, this was another episode of The Den. You know, if you're looking to get in touch with the community, then this was definitely a good episode. Plan on having some more people who are running for, Board of Mayor and Aldermen, or what's normally called BOMA. Let me know. Feel free, put in the comments, wherever that you're seeing this, put in there like more questions you want to see asked. I want this to be kind of driven by the constituents of the area. Even if you're outside of Farragut, I'm gonna be honest with you, I live just literally, Campbell Station's managed by Farragut, and I can't leave my neighborhood without driving on it. So I'm as close to Farragut as you could possibly get without being in Farragut. So what happens in Farragut, though, impacts me just like it may impact you. Let me know what questions are on your mind. This has been a great episode. I'm looking forward to talking with Drew Burnett. I'm looking forward to potentially getting Randall Roberts and Alex Kane on here as well. All right. See you next time.